I particularly like the Muzak one because I think there's a real poignancy to the notion that when you and Bruce used to work there, the musicians from what would form the kind of nascent Sub Pop label would bring in their demos at lunchtime and play them to you and Bruce. That's where you first heard "Touch Me, I'm Sick" by Mud Honey, I believe, or was that before that? In fact,
well, what happened was Seattle is a very small. The metropolitan area of Seattle is 3 million people, but the music scene in Seattle is very, very intimate, very small, and it always has been. And what was going on at Muzak at the time was kind of an unintentional salon of sorts, where a bunch of people who are very involved in the music scene would get together and talk about music from, other regions of the country, other countries, in fact. A lot of the music that was coming out of Australia in the 80s had a huge influence on the people who were working at Muzak at the time. The people, and as I say the people working at Muzak, I'm talking about the warehouse level, which is where Bruce and his cohorts were working. And anyway, so the great thing about the Seattle music scene, as it remains, is its intimacy and its belief that in its self-regenerating qualities, that instead of being influenced by stuff that's going on in other regions in the country and around the world, we're a part of the planet like everybody else is, but there's still a very insular, intimate quality amongst the musicians in Seattle. And I think that that's really the important thing in being able to move forward and making your own music, is being self-referential and not really giving a damn about what anybody else thinks or how anybody else has done it, but just doing it yourself the way that feels good to you.
Something...
That's what you wanted me to say, right?
Exactly.
Okay,
yeah,
good.
Spot on. Thank you. Something that was very immediately apparent when I first came out to Seattle to write a story on Sub Pop was the fact that Sub Pop clearly had a design way beyond that of pretty much... I can only think of a handful of other labels I've ever encountered that had such a focus of vision at that point, so early on, that all the photography was done by one person, Charles Peterson, who's, to be honest, Charles's photos, which I still think are unparalleled in live, certainly in live rock photography, you just look at one of those photos and you're like, there's no way the music can be this exciting. When I went out to Seattle, I just wanted, I was just like, is the music this exciting? And it was. But so Sub Pop had a uniformity of vision. It had the photography of Charles Peterson. It had very, very striking sleeve designs. It had, and most particularly, pretty much all the production was done by one producer, Jack Andino, from his Reciprocal Studios.
Whoa. I want to go back to the photography. Now, was it the photography that was that exciting, or was it the alcohol? Case closed.
It could have been a combination of the both, and the fact that Seattle had a coffee place on every corner. Mm-hmm. That was pretty exciting.
Yeah, that too.
Pop music's not just about the music, it's about many different factors. The cheap alcohol, or in my case, free alcohol, because I was being given it.
Jerry came over, as stated, in 1989, and Seattle being the provincial place that it is, we looked up to the British music press. It was like, when Jerry walked off the plane, it was as if a god were descending from Mount Olympus to bless, the hoi polloi, the peons of Seattle, with his wisdom and greatness and critical aptitude. Ha! No, it was great. It was a wonderful thing. But the one thing that Jerry actually, or the legend, was the first person to come over and document what was going on in Seattle and give it a certain legitimacy in the international music press. The only other person who had done that at the time was the late John Peel. And I think I still owe you that money from back then, don't I?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
$600, I think.
$600? Okay. I'll go to the bank machine a little bit later.
But I mean, but my point about Sub Pop clearly had a game plan, even at that point, especially at that point.
Well, Bruce Pavitt went to the school in Olympia, Washington, called Evergreen State College, which is sort of a free school. And at this school, it's not free in terms of tuition, but you could construct your own curriculum. And he actually graduated with a BA in punk rock. And while there, he spent a lot of time creating fanzine material, working both on his own Subterranean Pop fanzine and on another fanzine that was called Op, that later became Option Magazine, which was a popular music and arts magazine in the United States during the 80s. It's since folded. But while he was there, he spent a lot of time strategizing and thinking about the way he would run a record label. For me, I was a longtime music fan as well, but this stuff was much more intuitive. I reacted in the moment. Bruce was much more of a pop philosopher, as it were. So when we went into business, he had a lot of ideas about the way that things should go, and they were implemented accordingly. But I've got to say, and you know, I am the first one to acknowledge Bruce's talent and vision, because I think that he's really a visionary and a wonderful individual. But for those of you who are starting your own labels or are in bands, I think it's important to disregard everything that Bruce and I did, because, well, not disregard it. I mean, if you're a fan of the music, I'm grateful and enthused by that. But I think that it's important for people to create their own models about the way things in creating a new record label, particularly as the times are so much different, both in terms of accessibility, distribution channels, access to radio, access to the internet, of course, recording, and every other way. Just creating music and having a record label